Welcome to PWS United, a podcast for the Prader-Willi syndrome community, brought to you by PWSA USA. This podcast gives the latest news in research, advocacy, and family support by bringing together staff, volunteers, PWS treatment specialists, biotech and pharmaceutical representatives, caregivers, family members, and individuals with PWS. Our goal is to share education, awareness, and resources with those living with PWS and their supporters. Join us in our mission to enhance the quality of life and empower those affected by Prader-Willi syndrome.
Hello, I'm Elaine Towle, Advocacy Specialist at PWSA USA, and mom to James, age 39, living with PWS. In these episodes, we're meeting with siblings of people living with Prader-Willi syndrome to explore what sibling advocacy looks like at the kitchen table, in school, at the state house, maybe in IEP meetings, clinic visits, and everyday moments that can change how a community shows up. Today, I'm joined by Joe Gill, whose brother Gavin is living with Prader-Willi syndrome. And a quick note before we start, our conversation may touch on sensitive topics like medical experiences and challenging behaviors, so just take care while you're listening. So hi, Joe. Thank you for joining me today.
Elaine, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Tell me a little bit about your brother.
It's tough to describe. I mean, all in good terms, but love him. He is full of energy, biggest heart, strong imagination, is able to run and do whatever he wants to do, but has a very wild imagination, I should say, where he keeps us all young. It keeps us very energetic, keeps us constantly moving and constantly guessing, which makes life at home very interesting. Obviously, there comes with some challenges, but overall, it's a wonderful ride. Talking with them, hanging out with them, learning with them, and you're able to teach and kind of grow in new ways, but as well as he teaches us, right? Like there's something to be said like the power of like simplicity and certain things. And I think that we're all really grateful for him as we've all said. I mean, listen, like there are definitely some challenges that come along, but in the end, it makes you a better person and it makes you more well rounded and things like that. But Gavin is turning 20 this year. So, went through, graduated from our high school, Hanover High School, and then now he's kind of in their post high school to like 22 program, doing well, and yeah, he's thriving so far.
Great. And how many siblings are there?
So 5 siblings, or
And
5 boys total, I should say. He's the baby of the 5.
it's an interesting birth order position as well. So
Yep.
what's an early memory for you of realizing that PWS was kind of part of your family?
It's a great question. One of the ones that I think when I first hear that is a time when my younger brother Steven and I took a trip like we always would to my aunt's country store right around the corner from us. And in the summer, whenever we were on vacation, we'd always just go run and do this. It would be a typical quick activity. We'd run in, grab a candy bar and a soda or something, and come home. And there was one day specifically I can remember. Sometimes we'd eat there, but other times we'd bring it back. And I can remember having to kind of sneak the food into the house and go into our pantry, Steven and I, and eat it there. And I had done it so many times that I think for a while it just felt normal. It was like, oh, this is just kind of what you do. But then it hit me one day, and that day in particular, where it was like, wait a second, like not everyone does this. Like not everyone has to run off and do that, or not everyone has to have a locked pantry and do things like that. So I think after that, it opened my eyes up a little bit where it was like, wow, this isn't completely normal per se. And I don't want to say shape things in a negative way, but like shape things, if you will, where it was like, hey,
Yeah.
like this is different. This is what Prader Willi is in one aspect, not in everything, but in
Yeah.
its most commonly known.
How old were you?
We were probably about, like, 10 or 11, which, I mean,
Yeah.
there's about a 6-year age gap for, like, Gavin and I.
So he was 4 or 5, so yeah,
Yes.
interesting. I just heard a story in my family. My cousin remembers this. She's close to my age, and she remembers being at my parents' for some event, and the younger kids all being out in the yard, and they were all having cupcakes, and her daughter came in and said to her later, "How come James had to come in and ask if he could have a cupcake?" She just didn't understand, and I thought, "Wow, okay, that's,
Yep.
those things happen even when you're not expecting it.
It
We
is, and
we
it's so one of the things that I think from the family dynamic that's so interesting is like most parties and celebrations are centered around food, right? What can I bring for food? What kind of stuff we're gonna have for food? Look at all the food they have out, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And a lot of times with that is that just that hidden challenge is that you don't recognize and don't see that with Prater Willie, there's obviously structures and stuff put in place, whether it be in a
mhm,
daily routine or whatever. But it's a simple measure like that, like, hey, just knowing, well, I have to ask for a cupcake.
yeah,
But that's not necessarily normal for everyone else. Like some kids are just gonna go grab one.
yeah,
Maybe you shouldn't have more than 1 or 2, but they do,
yeah, yeah.
right? So that's definitely another just difference or nuance to it,
Yeah, yeah, interesting. It's interesting to think of those little things too,
right?
so now, I'm sure Gavin lives at home with your parents. Do
Yeah.
any other siblings home?
So, actually, most of us are still home right now, so I'm
Oh,
still
okay,
with them. Yeah, so it's that one's an interesting dynamic as well, but we have so 4 of us are still home. The oldest, Pat, is out of the house. So
okay.
he's married now, and he actually just had his first baby.
Oh,
So
fun. Congratulations,
yeah.
uncle. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're all kinda still around, and everyone has their own unique relationship with him, which I think there's also something to be said for kids with Prader-Willi. Man, I can only speak really on behalf of my kinda perception through Gavin, but
Mhm.
their ability to, I don't wanna say just relate to others, but build relationships with other people and strike some sort of connection and run with it is unparalleled. So that's something that I think we've all kinda grabbed onto, if you will.
Interesting. Good. What do you wish people understood about PWS that they often miss?
So, one of the hardest things I think about Prader-Willi is that Gavin from, like, a visual perspective, and I should stop, but I'm just kinda, like, referring to Gavin, but really, like, at the broader sense. He when, kinda looking at him from afar or something like that, you may not right away jump to, "Oh, there's some sort of disability or something else with it." But then I think what often happens is there's an initial explanation of, well, hey, it's an eating disorder or it's a result of the deletion of the 15th chromosome, or whatever it might be. And sometimes I feel like there's almost a stop, right? Where people don't necessarily really understand the second piece, right? And I think that almost takes either a lived experience or a full like grasp of the situation. Where I think sometimes it's even in family moments where you're like we mentioned, whether it be a family party or a big dinner or whatever it might be. And sometimes it's not having the like others not understanding fully the effects of those controls, right? Or if those controls aren't in place, what happens? So whether it be a big holiday and Gavin per se always having the same structure, or having the same couple things for dinner, or knowing he's going to have meat, vegetables, another side, and that's it, whatever it might be. And then it's dessert an hour later or something. Well, when that's not there, whether it be Thanksgiving or a birthday party or Christmas, and it's different times, things get thrown off a little bit, and it's juggling and dealing with those hurdles. Now, some people don't see it and it's like, "Oh, well, it's not that bad." Or, "Hey, it's okay, well, we have other stuff for him." Yes, you do, but you're not fully grasping that this is what's on his mind 24/7. Like, this is what he's thinking. That feeling of insatiable hunger that you might have at 4 o'clock after you had lunch and you're waiting to go home and have dinner, he has that 24/7.
Yeah.
So it's fully understanding that and then grasping with, "Hey, you're gonna try to explain it to him, but he's not fully comprehending things the way you're seeing it. And if you aren't understanding completely where like how everything all the puzzle is shaped, then you're explaining a broken picture to him that he's not getting."
Right, and you're watching saying, "This is not gonna go well."
Yes,
And they don't have a concept of that. Yeah.
yes, and then it's kind like so I think that piece is sometimes hard where it's like an idea of, "Hey, listen, like, this is a unique, rare disease." It's one of those things that, yes, can there be a lot of commonalities and cut things? Sure, but there are certain pieces to it that have to be handled the way it's supposed to, if you will, or the way that we kinda commonly know it as. So whether it be successful tricks, which I should also say, with Prader-Willi being on a spectrum, it's not a one size fits all. It's not
No.
like something that's just working for him is gonna work for every other kid or vice versa.
Yeah.
So with that, I think that that's something to also consider where it's through lived experience. And it's
Yeah.
kinda like, hey, like, understanding that piece, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, yeah. Talk to me about, bringing friends home as you were growing up, having friends come to hang out or, whatever you were gonna do. Think of examples of when you felt kind of most seen by somebody else or most misunderstood because of the situation at home.
I think what's really interesting is, like, when I bring up again, I'm gravitating to the food piece. Maybe it's just it's 3:15, but I think that with the food piece, when friends would come over, it would be different. Like, it would be, like, a little more structured than I think I actually really remember, where it was like, "Hey," like, yeah, we'd have food, but the food would go away. We wouldn't really notice, and we'd continue doing our own thing, and then we'd come back, there'd be some sort of dessert or whatever. Whereas if I was at their house, the food would kind of always be out, and it was like it wasn't always out, which to us didn't really make a difference because we were off doing our own thing afterwards, but I did notice, "Wait, this is a little strange." As far as the where I feel most seen, I think some of that stuff could be in instances where if Gavin was getting frustrated or if we were in a social setting, whether it be like in a store and not understanding something or knowing that I don't want to say like lashing out isn't really the right term, but essentially getting frustrated or whatever it might be and not understanding, hey, listen, you can't do this or you can't ask for this or we're going here, whatever it might be. And I think sometimes, again, it gets I don't know if it's like an overcompensation piece where it's like, hey, like you're trying to be considerate of everyone else that you don't want them to see him yelling or you don't want him to be embarrassed by or have everyone look at him, things like that. Like a bunch of different kind of situations or stuff run through your head.
Mhm.
And I think that sometimes it's like as you get older, it's like, well, you see, like, hey, as he's still getting older, but then, like, in some of the emotions, in some of the situations, he's still younger in his brain, or he's still younger where it's like, hey, he might still be gravitating to things that he was into as well when he was 7 or 8 years
Right.
old.
Right.
And he may always be on that stuff. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's
Mhm.
just one of those situations that it's sometimes like you have to take that with a grain of understanding, right? Where it's
Mhm.
like, oh, like, I'm just thinking like, hey, like so and so's into sports or into this and that. And it's like, hey, like maybe he's into just coloring or Power Rangers or something else that he was into when he was younger. So I
Right.
think that the most seen piece, I would say more so in those examples of, hey, like sometimes it requires more patience or whether it be in a meltdown in public or something else, really that would be kind of common for any baby or young child still present throughout,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. So when you hear the term sibling advocacy, what do you think about? What does that look like in your life?
I think for me, it's kinda like having a voice for the speechless, if you will, but it's kinda like a voice for them, like, to have someone in their corner, and I think that everyone does that in a different way. I think some people do it in, like, quiet support behind them and doing certain things, other people, whether it be in forms of fundraisers or talking about it or mentioning things or giving speeches, doing research, um, throwing out different suggestions. I think, like, there's other piece that come into advocacy 'cause I really attribute it more to support, right? Where it's like, as much as it is getting the word out there and starting with more almost like preventative action, but as well as, I guess, just genuine support, where I see it as like it can be a little twofold, right? And I don't think it's necessarily just black and white, but I can see it as like for me personally, I've done a lot of different fundraisers and kind of spread the word that way and then talk about it in common conversation,
Yeah.
whether it be wearing like the Prater Willie shoes or just talking about it or whatever it might be. But I know others, it's, hey, they may turn to research and may turn to, well, I'm going to read up on as much as I can and try to understand this as best I can to try to put themselves in their shoes so they can be more prepared for whatever situation interactions they have.
Yeah.
Others, it's just being present in the current moment, which is more so support than I guess you could maybe argue advocacy. But
Right.
I think that one of the pieces that comes into play when you talk with people that have Prader-Willi or that have any rare disease, one of the, like, emotions that I think some families may have if they're struggling or whatever is this almost sense of feeling alone. So it's almost like having someone in your shoes or, like, being there with you helps you get through whatever you're going through. So I think sometimes it's having that piece, like just having someone behind you
Yeah.
is also just as important. Now, maybe I'm stretching the goalpost too much on advocacy, but I think that's kinda where I fall, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, no, that does make sense, and when I first met you, you were fairly close to having completed a pretty major fundraising task that you
Yep.
told me at that time you would never do again.
Yeah.
But talk just a little bit about that. What led you to that event, and would you ever do it again?
So I had pretty strong feelings about it after, and I think that maybe I have amnesia or something like that afterwards that potentially, but I'm not
Well,
really
tell
sure.
tell us tell our audience what
But
you
the
did,
event
so
itself was I ran the Boston Marathon for my brother back in 2022, and that had always been a goal of mine since my dad did it back in 2009. So he ran it for him when he was 4, and then we all, like, had thrown the idea around that we'd all do it together once my younger brother Steven turned 18. So at that point, we had talked about it and nothing was really, like, materializing, and then COVID hit, and I'm like, "You know what? Well, I kinda wanted to do it, like, my senior year." But things still got thrown off, and we were still dealing with the whole post-COVID world, that it was the year after I graduated college, I was determined, I said, "Nope, I'm gonna go do the marathon." And then I set out and I was like, yep, I connected with PWSA USA, set up the fundraising page. In typical me fashion, it was definitely not on time. We were later to the jump, but it actually all worked out and it all came together. And we got the page up with about 6 weeks to go until the actual race day, and we set out with an initial goal of like 8,000. That after talking with Melanie, we kind of jumped up and said, you know what, we might as well throw it in as 16. And I wasn't really sure. I was like, we have 6 weeks. There's no way we're getting 16,000 in 6 weeks. And lo and behold, the page went up, and within 4 days, we hit 16,000. And then we bumped it to 26. And about a week or so later, we hit 26. And then we bumped it to 32. We figured we'd double. Nope. Yeah, 26.2, then 36 or 30, 32, whatever it was. We doubled it, hit that, and then hit 35, and then ended up right around the 40,000 mark when it was all said and done in just about 6 weeks. So
amazing.
it was very cool. It was cool to have the whole marathon experience. I always kind of wanted to do that from seeing my dad do it, see other cousins, aunts, and uncles do it. It was always, and growing up in the Mass area,
Yeah,
I feel like that was always something that was in the back of my mind. But then to do it for Gavin and for Prater Willie was another cool kind of milestone for me. And then it kind of opened my eyes to the idea of fundraising, right? And the idea of raising money and awareness for Prater Willie and getting more people talking about it. One of the, like, biggest lessons I took from that was people wanna help. People kept coming up to me saying, "Well, we wanna donate, we wanna support you guys," which is more a testament to my parents, more so.
mhm,
They were incredible, their friends were incredible with their outpour of support, and really is kinda why it all came together. And I think that it's one of those things again, though, is like people wanna help you out and people wanna give and do things. They just wanna know where, or they need that, like, kinda first step or that first little push. And I
right,
think that that's where I kinda find with the fundraising piece is it's kinda just one of those moments that you're bringing people together for a cause, that people are all together and maybe in the moment they're not recognizing exactly what they're for or what they're doing or whatever it might be. But it's those little reminders that when people think back to what they did it for, they think back to Prater Willie. And you might get 5, 10, 15 more people looking it up, more familiar with it. Well, now it's expanding
yeah.
that much more in other circles, which is really cool.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Melanie will appreciate your plug for fundraising, so that's good.
Mhm.
But I
Yep,
I remember my memory of our conversation when we were talking about it, and I remember asking you, "Oh, how long have you been a runner?" And you said,
yep,
"I'm not a runner." And I was like,
yeah. So, like, I ran in high school, but I wasn't even really, like, a huge, huge runner in high school, and it was kinda like, I'm not really sure. I was like, I'm set out to do this, but I didn't really have the passion for it, and everyone kept coming up to me and going, "Well, you must love that runner's high, right?" And I'm like, "No, not really.
"Not so
Body's in
much."
pain most of it." Yep, just kinda getting through.
Yeah,
But, it was, like, in a weird way, it was honestly really enjoyable and a ride that I won't forget, where it was cool to kind of push yourself and challenge your own limits, if you will, like mentally, but also it was cool to do it for that reason, where it was okay,
yeah.
hey, we're doing it for a great cause and kind of uniting everyone that way.
Yeah, no, that was great.
Yeah.
I love that story.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
I had forgotten how successful it was. I knew it was successful, but the fundraising that you did, and I didn't realize it was only 6 weeks, is just amazing. So,
Yeah, so it like I said, I've never been known to do things, I think, in a timely fashion or right on time, but it really did all come right together, which was awesome, and it just showed, like, all the support and back and things of that that people had, that they just really wanted to help out and contribute to the cause.
yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. Thinking again about kinda growing up, how did your friends, your peers kind of respond when you explained PWS to them? I don't know, what were responses like? I mean, how did people react?
I think that everyone was I should say everyone's reaction was kinda unique but similar, where everyone it was interesting that you'd kinda wait and see how people would have their almost one-on-one interaction with him,
Mhm,
where, like I said, Gavin, I kinda attribute it back to him. His ability to kinda build relationships or find that thing with people is incredible. So, for instance, my friend Jeff and Gavin always talk about Peter Parker. It's always Spider-Man. Doesn't matter if Gavin sees Jeff at a restaurant, a funeral, a game, whatever it is, the first question he's always gonna ask is, "So how's Peter Parker doing?" Every time, no matter what, and it doesn't and they always pick up their conversation wherever it was. But then he'll pick it up with any friend group that we're in. He knows exactly where they left off and he jumps right in. And one of the things I kind of admire about him, and this is almost more of that like childhood way of communicating things like that, is he doesn't put up social barriers, right? He doesn't have kind of like that embarrassment of, oh, I got to reach out or I'm nervous about what so and so is going to say or things like that. He just says it. And he, for lack of a better term, he says it how it is. I mean, he will be blunt. He'll say what he wants, but he also says it, which I think is something that people can really take from him. But as far as what friends' like initial reaction was, or what their interaction was after hearing it, or whatever it might have been, I think some people hear the term like rare disease or disorder, and they kind of have a negative connotation to it. And it's, oh well, wait, what's wrong with them? What's this? What's that? And I have to admit, like, we have a great support system where everyone was awesome. Everyone kind of took him in and welcomed him in and kind of viewed him in a positive light. And it was always like he was the light of the room. He came in and everyone it was like, "Oh, Gavin's here." So, I think that obviously helped where everyone was so welcoming. And he has to share a quick story in terms of, like, his effect on not only us, because whether it be our friends that are whether they're doing it for us or for Gavin or just inclusivity in itself. One cool memory and kinda standout point we had with Gavin in terms of his ability to connect with others, which I think this is kinda where that was going, is when he was in middle school, there was a group of his friends that we had known some of the, like, older siblings and things like that, but there were a group of his friends that saw him at lunch, and he was sitting with some of the other kids in his sub-separate classroom, and they invited him over for lunch to sit at this table, and he came home and he had the best day because he was talking with them, and they were talking all about, sports and wrestling and different things that Gavin was interested in. And I can remember my parents telling me, because I was at college at this point, and they were like, "Well, yeah, like, our the teacher called and said he had the best time at lunch," and I was taken back. I'm like, "Wait, what happened at lunch?" Like, was it a horror story? Like, did someone give him food? Did something happen? Like, what was it? And they told me the story. I'm like, "Wow, that was really cool," and they kept doing it. It was every single day, and it was that simple act of kindness, but then he looked forward to it. And then it was, well, those were his friends. That was who he always looked forward to seeing, and that continued from when he was in 6th, 7th grade all the way through senior year. And these kids weren't asked by a teacher, they weren't asked to go over and do anything, but it was just like that simple act of kindness, which made the biggest difference for him. So then he always looked out for them no matter what. He always had their back. He'd always see them, but his face would light up every time he saw them. And the difference is like he's still in touch with them to this day. They still come by and see him post graduating school and stuff like that. But it's one of those moments that again, it's almost like restores faith in everyone coming after you. But it's also, I don't think it would necessarily be possible or would have happened if he wasn't the way he was. Do you know what I'm saying? That if
mhm.
he was, whether it be like colder or not as welcoming or energetic or whatever it might be, that might not have happened. But
Yeah.
for him, it was like, hey, he did that, and they embraced him and they kind of took him in and they listen, he's gonna talk about most of the same points and kinda stick and run with things for a while, and I'm sure at a certain point it was like, "Hey, listen, we don't wanna keep hearing about whatever it might be," but that never really came up.
That's
And
amazing. I'm kinda goosebumply from that story because
right?
not yeah, I mean, my son never really had that kind of experience. He had a few friends, but it wasn't like that. That's amazing.
Well, we're incredibly grateful for it. Like, we all, my parents did a whole little, like, I don't wanna say like award ceremony, but little thing for them as they were graduating high school for the kids just to recognize what they did because it was something that it was a simple act of kindness, but it was the consistency of, like, continuing to do it.
Yeah,
And it made the biggest difference for him that it was that's what he was excited about going to school for.
yeah,
So and it does. Like, that kinda stuff, I also think, is the little things that people can do on a day-to-day basis where it's like, "Hey, it's nothing too overwhelming, but it's something that everyone can put into practice
yeah.
and will make a big difference."
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So that's a real inclusion thing, and inclusion
Yes.
such a big word. Kind of on the flip side, do you remember seeing barriers to kind of inclusion for him as he was growing up or kinda in your circle?
I can think of times where he would wanna come in, and it would even be times, like, if it was my siblings and I playing a sport or we were doing something. And whether it was just like that we were older or lack of motor skills and mobility and things like that, there'd be a slight hindrance, right, in his performance and things like that. They'd be like, "Hey, well, we wanna play, and now you're including this. Well, now it's different. Like the whole game's different than what it was." So sometimes I think we'd also have to remind ourselves, like, "Hey, this is okay too." You know what I'm saying? Like it's not like everything doesn't need to be so black and white, which makes something that I sometimes struggle with. But it's like, hey, that's okay. We can do things this way as well and be a little more fluid and deal with it and focus more so on having fun in the game and not just being, oh, it had to be this competitive, whatever it was game.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes I saw that, but then as well, like if we were with our friends or doing stuff like that, it would be, hey, we want to do something that's including him as well and not just excluding. So when you think about that, like whether it be the big one, food. If we were having people over, one way that we're including him is by not having food present or by food doing whatever it might be. Or if we were going to go to a game or we're all gonna hang out, well, hey, like, what's he gonna do? If we're going on vacation, all right, let's go do something that he can also do and he can also enjoy.
Right.
So I think it was sometimes those experiences where it was like, hey, you had to consider someone else as well. You had to consider what he was able to do, which excluded some of the opportunities or things that maybe we wanted to do,
Mhm.
right? Like, hey, if we, or I shouldn't say that comes out negative, that we maybe wanted to do in the current moment, right? Where like without seeing the bigger picture, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Mhm. Mhm. But you guys were kids too, so,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, so I see that. Thinking about his future, kind of his adulthood,
Yeah.
what kind of worries or hopes do you have for him? Have you thought about that?
It's something that I think we think about a decent amount. And I think the big thing for him is, or the big worry, I should say, is kind of the lack of really like kind of services post 22, just in general for kids with like special needs or anything
Yeah.
like that. So I think that that's kind of a glaring hole just in like society as a whole,
Mhm.
where it's we kind of hold kids with special needs hand throughout school until they hit 22, then they hit that magic number and hey, you're off on your own. And we kind of admitted, hey, well, you weren't able to do everything by yourself throughout school, but now you're going to be able to do things on your own. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think that piece comes up a little bit, but I think just that kind of future unknown is one of those kind of worries there. Like, hey, how that all looks. But but I said we kind of fall back on we have a great support system present. It's like everyone's kind of like pitched in and done some things, and he's kind of a byproduct of that, I think, where he benefits from bouncing off and seeing other people and having different reactions and things like that, and interactions, I should say.
Mhm.
And yeah, he's been doing well.
Yeah. Good. Has your family I mean, you guys are all older than he is.
Yeah.
Has your family had conversations about kinda what his future might look like, about guardianship or, housing and jobs and they're all huge issues. Huge.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff we haven't really gone into tons of detail on in full
Yeah.
transparency. It's kind of one of those situations where we initially built a in-law on the house here that he'd be able to kind of take over, if you will. Like when he gets older, like the plan can be. that he would move on one side and the other family, whoever was staying in the house, would kind of take the other side.
Mhm.
So that was kind of the initial plan when that was formed, whatever it was, how many years ago. But in terms of like the guardianship and other stuff, that really hasn't been like ironed out too much, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know. I went through that with my son. He's
Yeah.
he's older now, but you kinda get through high school, kinda do the next thing, and your brother's doing a post-high school thing,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden it's like, "Wait a minute, we're 22, what do we do now?" So,
Yeah.
oh, I understand, yeah. If you could design the ideal support system, adult support system for your brother, what do you think it would look like?
It's a great question. I'm not entirely sure. I think that for him, one of the things he thrives on is structure, right? And that support system would provide structure.
Mhm,
But I think for him, it's the idea of being able to get up and do something that he's interested in or that motivates him or that like all of us really essentially want
mhm.
and kind of go through and live a fulfilling life that way. One of the things he's always wanted to be is a zookeeper. And it's always been a dream of his. And what my mom does a great job of is we have close to probably 30 different pets at our house now, but they're all in different cages, different kinds of animals, different stuff. But it gives him that sense of purpose to like walk around and feed the animals, see them all, and interact with every one of them.
That is
So,
amazing. I love that. I
yes,
love your mother.
yes, no, she's awesome. But it's one of those things that he's able to interact with them, and I swear the animals can tell because they're all gentle and soft with him and able to kinda interact with him and do things with him that they can tell, hey, like, they have to be gentle or do whatever. So I think for him, like, in a perfect world, he'd be able to kinda do that and interact with different animals and do his own thing, but in the safety of whether it be in his own house or something that way that you don't have to worry about that. The looming problem is just the food aspect and being able to, like, really fully manage that and be present, and that way, a spot where he can maintain his own independence, but he also has the safety of others kinda, watching over him and understanding, "Hey, like,
Yeah.
this is what it is," if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense, and those situations are hard to come by. Sometimes you
Yeah,
have to build it, you have to kinda create it
yeah,
yourself. So, I'm sure those are issues that your family will be challenged with
yes.
over the next few years. What message would you have for younger siblings just starting this journey? So say a teenager who's got a younger sibling that's kind of 4 or 5 years younger than them, and all of a sudden the PWS things are really becoming an issue.
I think the best recommendation I would have is being present with the sibling.
Mhm,
And kinda spending time learning and building that relationship with them.
mhm,
I think that once you build the relationship and kinda have that foundation strong, it's that much easier to kinda do everything else,
mhm.
because then everything's rooted in that foundation. If there's no foundation in place or there's not any sort of relationship, it's very hard to relate or put yourself in that person's shoes or have any sort of, I think, attachment to really build on it. That I think one of the best things that we all kinda did was we all were able to kinda spend our time with him or to in different ways too, as a group, but also one-on-one, right? The kinda benefit to and not everyone has this luxury, but the benefit of being in a family where it was 5 siblings and 2 parents, well, odds are someone was gonna be home. You know what I mean? So, that someone would be around doing something
Yeah,
that it freed up other people to also go off and do their own thing, but someone else would be home to help, like, kinda be with him or take care of him. But it's also to just kinda live and, like, learn about life with him, which is kind of a weird way to put it, but it's kinda like you put yourself you see things through his perspective. And when you start to get that foundation and understand, "Oh, this is how he's interpreting things. This is what he's reacting to. This is what works. This is what doesn't." You start to see, "Oh, alright, like, let me watch now and see how other people interact with them. Wait,
mhm,
they're doing this. I know he's not gonna like that." Or, "This person's doing that." And I think for me, after I was able to kinda do that and spend that time and, bond over things that he was interested in, that kind of opened me up more so to wanting other people to be able to see and do that and understand, "Hey, it's like, this is the situation, but it's also, like, you're gonna get through it, like, it's okay, you're gonna be able to push through, you just need to kinda fall back on that." But I think the biggest thing is, without that relationship, it's just not gonna be possible.
yeah.
So you need to kinda build the relationship and then work from there.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's great advice. really focus on the relationship right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. All right, so a couple of quick questions to kind of
Yep.
wrap things up. What's one myth about PWS that you'd bust in a sentence?
This idea that maybe they're not able to do certain things, they're not as smart as some people may think they are, that just because they have some sort of learning disability that they can't thrive, they can't do something. His ability to recall information or anything from a show or movie or series that he is interested in is unparalleled. I
Mhm,
mean, he knows I'll quiz him half the time, but it's like I can ask him any question about Marvel or let's say it's wrestling or like again, certain sports, and he just knows it and he'll go over and he'll recite it and he spits it right back. So I think one of these things that although yes, they need help and yes, they need certain things, they're also very independent and they're also very smart. And although, yeah, you know what, it may not show up on a school like structured English, math, science type thing,
mhm,
he can do it in many other ways. And I think that the secret to that intelligence is it's not just about how well you do on your report card and how well you kind of do in life, if you will.
mhm.
So I think that although he may not have the full deck when it comes to all that like specific school structured stuff like the rest of us, he's got more than enough in the other areas.
Yeah, great. I'm thinking specifically kind of about what you were talking about, once you get to 22 and the services kind of disappear.
Yeah.
What's one policy change you'd make tomorrow if you could?
I guess one policy I would change is that there'd almost be like a continued education school or course or stuff like that for kids with these social services. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be time in the school. Because I think the hard part is with a lot of these disorders, some of the stuff that they're maybe lacking in is not necessarily going to be a benefit to spending more time on science or history or English. It
Yeah,
might be more of a benefit if they're out interacting with people socially, right? But there's not necessarily a ton of programs in place, or really, depending on where you are, any that these people can go interact with others in the society or just in a typical day to day. And I think the other thing, just generally, I mean, we spend so much time focusing on, like I said, the core STEM classes that we don't really get into the, actual day-to-day stuff. So I think for one change I would make is that there'd actually be more options or more accessibility for people post 22 that they'd be able to,
life skills,
yeah, do
Yeah,
what we all do on a day to day.
yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not saying again, I understand with Prater Willie, like there's going to be constraints for people to, hey, like they're not going to go to the supermarket every day. I get that.
Mhm,
But why can't they work at a pet store? Or why
mhm,
can't they work at any other like retail type store
mhm.
or any other like kind of laborer type job, which I know like they can, but I get it. Like they're going to need some supervision or stuff like that. But I think that that's almost a shortcoming in society that we like could be fixed.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's great. Okay, last question.
Yeah.
What's one moment of joy with your brother that you'll never forget?
It's tough to limit it to just one. I
Okay,
think
I like that.
that, yeah, when you go back and we look at like either videos or certain memories or just his witty comments that he comes up with out of the blue, they do keep you laughing. But I think one of my favorite ones is when you come home from work and whether you had the best day or the worst day, you come in, he's always just happy and excited to see you. And it's always like, oh, hey, you know what? I love you, Joe. And I'm like, "Oh, thanks, Jeff. Love you too," whatever it is. And it's like those little moments of it's like, it's always so happy and excited to see you, but it's like he always is. Like, it's just like he comes in and yeah, don't get me wrong, there's some times that, maybe I set him off and I said something that he didn't like and now I'm public enemy number 1, sure. But there's also it's those little moments that he finds the joy and simplicity in things that he's just happy to sit there and hang out, whether it be, hey, he wants to go watch a movie with me
Yeah.
or a show or go somewhere. Like it's his ability to find the joy in little things that kind of sparks that like childhood excitement again, if that makes sense. So I think that's probably my favorite
Yeah,
aspect.
no, the little things are the big things, and you don't think about it at the time. Thank you so
Okay.
much. It's
Of
been
course.
great to
Thank you.
chat with you. Great to reconnect. I hope we run into each other again sometime soon,
Definitely.
and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of PWS United. If you want to learn more about Prader-Willi syndrome and how PWSA USA is making strides in advocacy, family support, and research, visit www.pwsausa.org. And while you're there, we encourage you to sign up for our Pulse email newsletter to stay informed about the latest news, resources, and events. Don't forget to subscribe to the PWS United podcast so you never miss an episode. Our team is always available to support families and their loved ones living with PWS 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You can call us at 941-312-0400 or email info@pwsausa.org. Catch a new episode next Tuesday, and until then, have a great week.